I had lived through many of the same experiences he had. I had seen the centuries of bitter warfare and intolerance give way to a new, peaceful society. That change had happened seemingly overnight, and I thought Tinker's words had referred to this. What I didn't understand was that Tinker's proverb wasn't a recollection of history, but rather a vision of the future. Little did I imagine how prophetic Tinker's words would prove to be, or how quickly we would fall under the wave of black dragon ships that stormed our shores that fateful summer. Chapter 1. Roby asked me to marry him on a breezy summer afternoon under the shade of an old elm tree on a hill overlooking the Riverfork Midsummer Fair. It was not the first time he had asked, though he had grown increasingly persistent in recent years. I said no, of course, as I had so many times before. 10 years had passed since the death of Prince Sheldon and the end of his ambitious coup attempt. 10 years since the end of the war between the humans and the Talmar, and the destruction of my hometown of Riverfork. In the years that followed the war, the humans rebuilt the town, and eventually Riverfork grew into a small but bustling city. Brick walls and tile roofs replaced the thatched roof split-log construction of the old village. Tall buildings grew up in place of the rustic cabins and frontier homes, and muddy paths became wide cobbled streets with boardwalks and intricately wrought gas lamps. The streets were lined with bakeries, shops, restaurants, and inns. Docks sprang up along river. Barges made regular trips back and forth between Riverfork and Honora, the large city to the north. Commerce thrived. Families grew. Young men and women left their family farms in increasing numbers to move into the city where they could work and earn money to buy the wonderful things that industrialization had provided for us. In the center of Riverfork, the residents built a park as a memorial to the brave souls who had died during the war. It was a lovely, sprawling piece of land, with a wide grassy meadow and trees scattered throughout, and a dense old-growth forest along the western edge. It was there, beneath the shade of an ancient elm, that I found myself cornered by my would-be mate. It had been an exhausting morning, filled with faces both familiar and half-remembered. I had seen farmers and store owners I had known in my childhood, as well as many of the children that I had gone to school with, now grown and raising children of their own. Among them was Tara Cooper, a farm girl I'd met while living with Tinker. I had never known Tara very well, but I remembered her family fondly, especially for the dog that Tinker had brought from her father to protect me when the Cantors invaded. That dog, a flame-coated healer I named Cinder, had been my constant companion for years, until the inevitable creep of age and an especially cold winter took her from me. I missed her terribly. I'd considered finding a new companion many times, but I knew that no other animal could ever replace Cinder. That afternoon, Tinker and I left the fair to have a picnic up on the hill overlooking the park. Tinker's fans followed us, and it wasn't long before he wandered off, surrounded by a flock of admirers, mostly elderly women, who had outlived their husbands and were now revelling in the glow of a true hero. They took great pleasure in catching the attention of the wily old adventurer, and he took great pleasure in giving it to them. I watched Tinker's highly animated movements as he described some old battle that he'd probably never even witnessed, much less fought in, with the gaggle of old women hanging on to his every word. He soaked up their adoration like a sponge. Honest man that Tinker was, he wasn't beyond exaggeration from time to time, especially in the company of admirers. I didn't want to deprive the old man of his simple pleasures, so I smiled and let him enjoy the attention as I watched him from the shade of the elm tree. And that was where Roby found me. "Can I sit with you?" he said, as his long shadow fell over the blanket that I had spread out on the ground. I glanced up at him sideways, squinting against the sun. He was dressed in a fine white shirt, with a long-tailed coat and tall, knee-high boots that he'd folded halfway down.